Hi, my name is Brent Neace. I'm the Rocky Mountain District Youth Secretary, the Section 5 representative, and the youth pastor at Apostolic Life Center in Helena, Montana.
My name is Rehanna Neace, and I am the youth pastor's wife at Apostolic Life Center in Helena, Montana.
So, Brother Potts asked us to do this little testimony video about kind of our stories and where we came from and, you know, what brought us to where we are today. You know, growing up, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, back in '95. My dad received a call to preach around the same time frame and was the youth pastor at our local church. We moved out here to Helena in the fall of 2002 and have been here ever since. You know, growing up in the pastor's home, it was always a little bit different. You would have your struggles, you would have your trials. You were maybe privy to information that, you know, other members of the church weren't privy to it, perhaps. And so it was a little bit of a struggle because, you know, people expected you to be perfect 100% of the time, and it wasn't always easy, kind of having that stigma about it, if you would. And because of that, you know, I was always kind of nervous, just in church and things like that. But I remember the day I was called to preach. It was a youth camp. I don't remember quite the year, but I was around 15 years of age. The minister was preaching about if you could do anything for God, what would you do? And in that moment, I heard God speak to me, I want you to preach. And I was like, say what? Me? I mean, if you've never met me, I'm this super shy, awkward guy. Even now, I'm kind of fidgety and nervous about this. But so I was like, God, I don't like standing in front of people. I don't really like talking in front of people. So why do you want me? And it was always one of those things I struggled with. In fact, for years, I ran from the call of God. In fact, I would say that from the time that I was, when he called me when I was between 14, 15 years of age until I accepted the call of God in January of, well, my junior year in high school, which would have been winter 2012 time frame. You know, all before that, I had planned to go to the Air Force Academy and fly bigger jets or heavy bombers, those kinds of things. That's what I wanted to do with my life. I like the idea of jets. I like flying. I love that kind of stuff. But it took God humbling me. And, you know, in fact, I remember one night after I had taken a bunch of advanced level classes and things like that in order to achieve my goals. And eventually I took too many, and it ended up, I ended up failing a bunch of classes in high school just because I couldn't keep up with the workload, and it was hard. And after that, I realized that my dream of going to the Air Force Academy was pretty much completely shot, because you need to have a pretty spotless record. You need to have a great GPA and things like that. And so as a young man or whatever, I was like, God, that was like the one thing I wanted to do. And so one night after church, Sunday night service, my dad and I, we got into just, I'd say, a disagreement or whatever. And he was like, well, son, that's obviously not going to work for you now. So you've got to figure out what you want to do with your life. You can't just stay at home and stuff. I was still in high school and things like that, but I had been moping around for 2 or 3 months, if you will. So I grabbed the dog I had at the time, and I like jogging. As you can see, I don't jog very much now. But I went for a jog that night, and I ran. It was, to give you a picture, okay, I live in the state of Montana. Montana is a very cold state, especially in the wintertime. It had snowed, it was icy out. I think it was there wasn't a whole lot of snow on the ground, but it was icy on the roads and things like that. And it was maybe like 20 degrees. It was 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I'd had the argument. So I grabbed my dog, grabbed my warmest running clothes I had, and I went for a jog. And I jogged and jogged and jogged. I went for a couple of hours. You know, it wasn't jogging the whole time, but, you know, just pushing myself to the breaking point, I guess, if you will. And finally, in the middle of East Helena, I stopped. I was out of breath. I was tired. My poor Vizsla, who has no fur, was shaking. Honey was her name. Finally, I just looked up at God and I cried, God, all right, I'm at the end of my rope here. What is it you want me to do? And I think it was that moment of breaking, if you will. of submitting my human flesh, if you will, to the Spirit of God. And I didn't get an answer that night, but I felt God reminding me, I have called you to preach. And it was after that I said, okay, God, I won't say I was more willing to listen. I still had my setbacks and I still had things that hindered me, if you will. But it was after that I went to the IBC, not Reality Week, what's that week, Brett? The Connect Week. And I stayed there and I realized, kind of felt God calling me, I've called you to come here. And so I finished up my junior and senior years in high school and graduated 2013. And then fall 2013 found me at IBC. But there I was, I pulled into the IBC parking lot, admissions day. And I sat there and I said, I have two choices right now in this moment. I could either accept the call of God that He has placed in my life right now, or I can drive home right now. Those were kind of where I was at. I was nervous, I was scared. I was about to meet a bunch of people, I had no clue who they were. I knew one other person, two. I knew Brother Gallion, but barely, and one other person at school. And I was nervous. And so finally I just said, all right, let's do this. And I kind of got out and I got out of the car, went to the admissions office. They asked me, so how long do you plan on attending Bible college? I said, they said 4 years? I was like, so that was it. And so while there, at first I didn't do very much. I was a very shy, awkward kid, if you would. But while I was there, I began to meet these friends and they started encouraging me to try out for like nursing home ministry and things like that. And it was at nursing home ministry that I began to grow myself, if you will. And I began to learn how to preach, learn how to talk to people. A lot of these folks, some of them weren't very coherent, but you had to learn to be able to reach them where they were. You had to realize that, yes, this person may be super sick and not doing very well, but you know what? It's now that they need Jesus. It's now that they need a chance to meet God. And so it kind of convicted me that I needed to do everything in my possible power in order to reach the lost, to do what I could. Along the way, I faced different temptations, different struggles, addictions, things like that. But it was amazing watching God work through me and heal me of those different things. And I realized that even the people at Bible college that you meet, people that you look up to, that even they have their struggles. Even they have had their issues, if you will. And it was reminded constantly that, even the heroes of faith that you read about in Hebrews chapter 11, the roll call of faith, if you will, each and every one of those people, they had their own type of situations and trials. And that they too were not perfect, but they still had to listen to the voice of God. And it's when we listen to the voice of God that He can truly speak into our lives and that He can change us.
My family moved to Montana when I was 10 years old. We were the only family living in my town, and we would need to drive an hour and a half to church one way every single Sunday. When I went there was no youth group. When I was 12, I started going in with the adult classes. I just always prayed for more people my age. I felt that loneliness very strongly in my teen years. I remember when I was 15, we went to a district conference, and I loved God so much. I loved His friendship and His mercy and His goodness. And I said, God, I just want to know what You have for me. What is Your plan and what is Your will, and how can I prepare myself to step into that? And I prayed at the altar. I remember my pastor's wife praying with me, people from the district, and I felt God say, you're gonna be a pastor's wife. I didn't want to really tell anybody about that. I feel like that's something women love to say or think or feel, but I felt that. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself to do all of the ministries that a pastor's wife could step into. Teaching, singing, music, filling in at any need. I had already taught myself guitar a little bit at 12, I decided, you know what, I'm going to teach myself piano. Taught myself chords, and I figured I could always step in and help with music ministry when needed. Marrying a pastor, I could lead that wherever we would go, missions, home, anywhere. I'd already been a little bit involved in teaching the Sunday school, and I helped out more with that occasionally. As I said, we didn't have a youth group in my church. I was the youth, but when I turned 17, we had some younger girls who were coming with parents and grandparents receive the Holy Ghost. So all of a sudden, I took the role of being the youth leader and teaching these kids. And I'd never had a youth group, so that was an experience in itself. But that youth group I was praying for, I got all of a sudden, but in a very different way than I expected. And I just saw that that was another way God was leading me into my ministry as a future pastor's wife. As I said, I struggled in my teen years. Anxiety, depression, I didn't know what it was at the time. I struggled in school as a teenager with my friendships, sometimes with loneliness. My senior year of high school, I was seeking God again on what He wanted me to do for my next step. And I wanted to go to IBC. Mentioned it to my parents, and my mom was not supportive. She was in church at the time, but she wanted me to follow a secular path. I was valedictorian of my high school, and she said, Rehanna, you need to use your education and scholarships and get a career. So I chose to go to nursing school instead. Little did I know that this was going to be the beginning of a very hard struggle. My mom in the time was in the process of backsliding, and my parents were getting a divorce. During my last month of high school, she left me with my now ex-stepdad and did not talk to me for several weeks. I had to finish school pretending everything was okay and was very depressed. I struggled with suicidal thoughts and didn't even realize that's what it was. I just remember crying so many days, lying in bed, just wishing I wasn't alive anymore. And with that, I thought I wasn't going to be in church anymore. I thought, God, you stopped loving me. You let my family fall apart. You did this. You don't care about me. It was the prayers of my church, my pastor's wife, these people who loved me and saw my struggle and my hurt that I know kept me. I ended up moving for college, going to Kalispell, where my church was, and I lived with a lady in the church. And I believe it was that love and support that kept me going on the right path, living for God, and knowing that I was loved. Through that, I continued to teach the youth group at our church. I finished my degree, and lo and behold, at a youth camp that I brought other youth to, I kind of re-met my husband. We'd grown up in this district together, probably have known each other since we were 14 or 15,
Yeah.
but I don't remember him. So at this youth camp, we were the old youth in our 20s, and hung out together in a group with all of the other older youth pastors, youth leaders, and just kind of started a friendship. And from that blossomed into a marriage of almost 4 years.
Yeah, we've been currently working in our church quite a bit. Rehanna sings with the praise team, I do too, and we lead the youth and the kids classes on Wednesday night and youth classes. Right now we're just busy trying to teach Bible studies and teach other people in our community about God. And we have several newer members in our church currently, and we're trying to build discipleship and just love these people. Montana is a little different in that we're not necessarily in the Bible Belt, so the people are it's a different approach to reaching them. And so you've really got, one thing that I've learned recently is that you've got to love people where they're at and realize that just because you want them to be saved in an instant doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it always works, and how growth and things like that takes time. Like this year my wife planted a garden, and we realized that sometimes those seeds take several weeks to sprout, even after like a strawberry plant, for example. some of those seeds sometimes take longer than the initial seeds that sprouted. And so everybody grows at a different rate. You've got to learn how to disciple people and their mannerisms, their characteristics, and you've got to reach them where they're at. But right now we're just so happy with where God has placed us, and we're looking forward to the future. May God bless you.